Ladies and gentlemen, in studio with us with his brand new book, DeVon Franklin, The Truth About Men, What Men and Women Need to Know. We all know him as Megan Good's husband. My brother, good to see you. Welcome to Sirius XM.
Man, it's good to see you as well. Thanks for having me.
All right, so we got beef already, man. Why you write a book telling all the brothers' secrets? What's wrong with you, man?
That's the problem.
You giving it all up.
We've been having too many secrets too long. That's why we're in the trouble we are in now.
No, man, tell us what you want to do here. What's the message you're trying to get out here?
You know, the message is that, there's a lot of truth about us that we need to know and that women need to know. And so I really wanted to write this book to be a conversation starter so that we as men and women can stop talking at each other and talk with one another. Mm-hmm. And as men, we're raised to not communicate. We're raised to not talk.
Right.
And there's a lot of stuff that stays underneath the surface. So most men struggle. And so I wanted to write a book to identify what that struggle is, what we can do about it, and just giving women information along the way.
So don't you kind of draw a comparison here to training?
Yes.
A dog?
Yeah, mastering the dog. Yes, that's right. That's right. Exactly.
Training a dog, y'all. So that blow is softened for me because I turned 50 a couple of years ago.
Oh, wow.
And I was tripping. I'm 50. And one of my female friends, we're dating anything, but she was saying to me that, and your book may prove this true. She said, Mark, you're not really 50. I said, what do you mean? She said, you all as men aren't as mature emotionally as we are as women. Y'all are like 10 years behind. So she said, you're actually probably like 40 in dog years.
Hilarious.
It made me feel better about my chronological age, but she had a point.
Yeah.
So what's up with us? What is it about us? The first thing you mentioned was our inability to be expressive. We just kind of keep it all in. What is that about? Where do we get that from?
So, I use a metaphor of mastering the dog. So men are not dogs. You and I aren't dogs. No man, listening or watching this is a dog.
Right.
However, the reason why this whole idea of men are dogs persists is because at times we can have an untrained dog-like behavior.
Okay.
And what does that mean? It means we want pleasure for pleasure's sake. We're only focused on what we want at the expense and sometimes destruction of everything else. Even if you think an untrained dog is cute, it's not cute for very long.
Yeah.
Why? Because leave it at home by itself.
Yeah,
when you come home, it's going to mess up everything and then almost sometimes defy you to say anything.
Yeah.
And so I use the lust as a way to identify what the dog is. So in the book, the dog is lust. And lust is a selfish impulse for personal, professional, financial, or sexual fulfillment, even if those means are detrimental. And so this is the thing that men struggle with. But every man, even though they have lust in them, the dog, they also have love in them, the master. Love is selfishness. Love is selflessness. Love is sacrifice. Love is love of self, God, the woman in our life.
Right.
As men, when we put love in control of lust, when we master the dog, this is how we can become the men we were called to be. But too often, we don't even communicate or express the fact that we're struggling as much as we are with lust. And that lust, again, it doesn't have to be just for women or sex. It can be money, power, greed, fame, success. This impulse, this desire to want what we want whenever we want it, however we want it. And whenever we as men continuously feed that, it becomes so strong that sometimes it in us begins to rule and potentially ruin our life.
But let me ask you this too, though, Devin. Having nowadays, some women, unfortunately, begun to assimilate into that kind of behavior that men do, the lustfulness and even the self-gratification. In other words, we just jump in a relationship and it's an immediate gratification to it with nothing else, no other foundation.
Well, this is true. However, and I touch on that a little bit in the book.
Okay.
But because I'm a man, I wrote from a male point of view.
Sure.
And too often, in my opinion, there are a lot of books out there that tell women what they need to do differently.
Right.
At the expense of never really holding us as men accountable and responsible for our behavior.
Okay.
So the point you're making is absolutely right. However, I choose not to focus on that because if I do, then the man reading the book says, oh yeah, that's right. Let's talk about them and let's not talk about us.
I see.
And so I feel like as men, we got to do our work. And part of that is to keep the focus and attention on the work that we have to do.
Million Man March, y'all. Let me just remind you, we took an oath that we would get ourselves together. So, our brother DeVon's not out of school in terms of writing this right now. So what can we do? What is it that you would say we need to be focusing on or changing in our behavior
Yeah.
to be better at this?
I think first it starts with just acceptance.
Yeah.
I mean, because listen, I mean, I'm not pointing the finger. I'm saying, I have one too.
Right.
I have this in me. I have this dog in me. I have this master in me as well. And so anything I don't accept, I actually can't change.
Mhm.
So a lot of times, it'll stay suppressed. And anytime we're suppressing something, we empower it. So for me and for any, man listening, it starts with, hey, you know what? I accept that this is here. I'm no longer going to suppress it. I'm not going to deny it. Once I accept it, now I have to put myself in a process to do something about it. One of the biggest things to do is discipline. Discipline is not always something that we love. We have discipline in our professional life. Sometimes we have discipline in sports. We have discipline in exercise. But when it comes to self control, that's where we don't have a whole lot of discipline. And so part of it begins with getting that discipline because that discipline lays the foundation for our success.
Discipline in terms of how we treat women.
Discipline in how we treat women, discipline in how we navigate our appetite, for women, for sex, for money, for power, for fame, discipline in how we live, changing our routine. Maybe we're hanging out with the wrong guys that are taking us down a
Mhm.
wrong path. So we have to have discipline to say, you know what, they may be my boys, but I want to go somewhere different.
Mhm.
So I can't hang out with the same dudes that keep me in a pattern in a place that I no longer want to be.
Mhm.
So as that discipline it means leadership. And as a man, I have to become a leader of my life, my decisions, my behavior, even though it's going to require sacrifice. Discipline, you cannot have discipline without sacrifice. So sacrifice means there are certain things I may want, but I'm going to go without them because there's a greater good that I'm pursuing.
So, it is the greater good for any man listening in a relationship or what have you, to pursue, I guess, a principle and committed and monogamous relationship. Is that an example of discipline?
An example of discipline is operating in truth. So, for example, even in a dating sense, if you're dating somebody, tell them the truth. These are what my intentions are. This is
Mhm.
where I am. I'm not in a serious period of time, or I am in a serious period of time. I'm
Right.
not looking for a wife. I am looking for a wife. Just
Okay.
be honest. I mean, it just
Yeah.
starts at a very basic level.
Yeah.
Hey, you know what? Here's where I am right now. I'm focused on my career. And here's the other thing: not only just being honest and truthful with intentions, but also as you're dating. Um, this is where mastery comes in, putting someone else's well-being above our own. Meaning, if you're dating somebody and you know you're not serious about them, but you see that they're getting really
To
serious,
be honest about right.
be honest
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
say, you know what? I don't want to lead you down a path
Mhm.
that ultimately will not bear fruit because I know I'm going to hurt you because I'm
Mhm.
not in this as much as you are.
Mhm.
So the master in me says, I need to step away
Mhm.
because if I
Mhm.
keep going down this path, I'm getting what I want out of it, which is companionship and hanging out with you, but I know this is not going to go anywhere. That to me is where it starts. That's discipline.
Yeah.
Where it's like, okay, even though I could be with her, I know I'm not doing right by her
Mhm.
and telling her the truth and also stepping out of a situation that may not bear fruit. So those are some of the, examples that I talk about in the book on how to get that discipline.
Um, it seems too though we have sort of an existential problem, especially in the black community. But I honestly these days I don't know that any community is immune to it. But within the black community, there's this, and I don't think it's a perception; it's real. There is a shortage of available brothers,
Yeah.
either physically, at most physically, and sometimes even emotionally. An inability to make that connection. Sometimes some of us have never seen an example
Hmm.
of a successful relationship, whether our parents had one or not, or what have you. So, what is it? Because you say what men and women need to know. I guess you have to think about what the women are thinking and looking. What is it that they need to see in us, or we need to demonstrate to them
Hmm.
to kind of repair that? Because like in the scenario you just described, companionship is there, but you're not interested in something serious. What if the sister is?
Hmm.
And then you man enough to say, okay, I'm not really about that. We may need to cut this off.
Hmm.
But then she's left
Hmm.
with a very negative and bitter
Hmm.
experience.
Hmm.
How is that ever get reconciled?
Well, I think the reconciliation it comes in many forms. One, I think this, like you said, this idea, this myth, okay, especially for women of color,
Okay.
that there's a shortage of men. The reality is that the numbers tell us there are not. And
Okay.
here's what I mean:
Okay.
if you are a woman of color, when you only focus on men of color, there may be a shortage. But when you're open to love, however love may come to you, then the numbers are not as dire as they may be when you're only looking at a certain type of man of color. So that's number one. The second thing is that in that situation, as a man, even if you're not interested, yes, you may produce a certain level of pain in her because she wanted something. However, there's integrity there. Because you were honest, you were upfront. She knows that. It wasn't like you led her on, even though she may not have gotten what she wanted. You
Right.
also handled it with as much care and as love as you possibly could. The third thing is that I think we have to get to a place where in relationships, especially relative to this issue, that I go back and I talk about Genesis and the story of Adam and Eve in this,
Mhm.
and this idea that so often in modern dating, women feel like they're not whole if they don't have a man, and a man fears commitment most of the time. And so I go back
Mhm.
to Adam and Eve, and I said, well, when you look at what the Bible says about that, it says that God said it's not good for man to be alone, and so as a result, He created Eve. So Eve comes into the earth. She doesn't ask where is Adam. She's whole. Adam is the one when he sees Eve says, "This is bone of my bone, flesh of my
Mm.
flesh."
Mm.
For this reason will a man leave his mother and father and cleave to his wife. So when we look at it in that context, men, we're the ones that need women. It's in our
Mhm.
design, it's in our DNA. We need the love of a woman. We need a committed love of a woman. And I would argue that most women can actually operate better than we can without them.
Yeah.
But so often we're conditioned and socialized to fear commitment as men. So one of the reasons why I wrote this book is to change that so we can think about it differently. I know that I wouldn't be where I am. You mentioned in the intro, yeah, my wife is Megan
Right,
Good.
right,
And, she's amazing and I love her dearly and she loves me. And I wouldn't even be who I am or where I am without her love and without
right.
us partnering up in life to do life together. And I think it's so important to reframe it. So the woman that may feel there's a shortage, it's okay to want love, but to not believe that you need it so much to become whole. And so part of it is to think differently about these things because so often when those statistics come up, they're from a vantage point of scarcity. And then here's the danger when we have a scarce mentality. So there's a woman who doesn't believe that she's whole until she has a man and the pool is scarce from which she can pull from, this is when a lot of women begin to not only lower their standards, but
Right.
tolerate behavior from men that they should be holding them accountable for.
Yeah, yeah,
So that's why, I wrote this book is to kind of challenge a lot of this thinking
yeah.
and hopefully get us to a place where we start to think differently. And as a result, the culture changes.
Okay, so let me try this. Women um, should begin to understand that they're more whole than they think they are,
That is correct.
as opposed to the societal conditioning.
Yeah.
And families do this.
Yes, they do.
Girl, when you get married, when you
Uh-huh.
have a husband, we've
Uh-huh.
always, okay. So that needs to go away. But on the flip side, those of us who are men
Yeah.
need to stop acting crazy and realize we actually need them.
That's right.
Okay,
Yes,
all
yes,
right, I
that's a
got it.
fact. That's a
All right,
fact.
y'all think y'all can do that? That's no, that's real talk. Did you, and you mentioned this thing with what is it about us and the fear of commitment? First of all, did you ever have a fear of commitment
Oh,
yourself?
without a doubt.
So tell us how you got over that.
You know what? I got over it by just being open, right? I got to the place where I was like, okay, I would date. The longest relationship I had before marrying my wife was 2 years, and we had it was a good relationship, but it just wasn't the right thing. And then before and after that, it was a couple months here and there.
Yeah.
And so then when Megan and I got together, on the third date, I realized, oh boy. Oh man, this is happening. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh no, I don't like first of all, she's famous,
Yeah.
and she's an actress, and those are things I just didn't want.
Uh,
But the more that we hung out, I realized that this is what was meant to be. And so a good friend of mine, having the right men in your life is important. So a
yeah.
good brother of mine, he said, DeVon, he said, you don't try to control this. Be open.
Right.
Don't try to control. Be open. You never know what God's going to do. So don't just think you understand it. Experience it.
Mm-hmm.
And that little advice from a man who was practicing mastery helped me to say, okay, I might be afraid of committing, but I'm going to face that fear. I'm going to, not run away. I'm going to run towards it.
Right.
And as a result, I've been married for 7 years and it's been amazing. So it just started
Yeah.
with being open and not getting ahead of ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. I think too. Don't we have to admit to ourselves as men, Devon, that sometimes our fear of commitment is rooted also in a level of insecurity.
Yeah.
We think we aren't really up to it or we're going to fail. It's not just always I can't commit to one woman. I got to be with all the women. It's just I think in this situation with this woman, especially if she's an exceptional woman.
Yeah.
I mean, half the brothers would have copped out. Making good, I can't do
Yeah.
that. You know, ain't no way I can't live up to that.
Right.
Jet, you know, it might be all good
Yeah,
brothers, but we
yeah.
just say to ourselves, man, ain't no
Yeah.
way in the world
Right.
I can live up to that standard. So that's a part of it too. I
It
mean,
is.
it's kind of irony. The man, the dog, you know, I'm big, rough, and tough, but then on the inside, there's a part of us
Yeah.
that says, yeah, no, I ain't really got this.
I ain't got it. I ain't got
Yeah.
it. It's true. And that's I touch it on in the book, whereas there is a lot of insecurity. And a lot of times as men, we mask the insecurity, you know, through whether it's over drinking, over sexing,
right,
overplaying, whatever it
Right,
may be,
right.
under committing, all of those things a lot of times are a reflection of our brokenness. And I talk about this in the book that most men deal with brokenness. Why? Because there's a box that society tries to tell us we're supposed to fit in. And if we don't, as men, fit in that box, whether it's, you know, most times like, oh, you're supposed to be the breadwinner and you're supposed to be strong and you're not supposed to cry and all these things that society says we're supposed to be, when we don't fit that box, it breaks us.
Okay.
Why? Because once we don't fit the box, we're met with violence. Stop crying. Stop being a wimp. What's wrong with you? And those names and that violence that we're met with, whether it's physical, emotional, or verbal, what happens is we learn, oh, I can't express how I really feel.
Yeah.
I can't be who I really am.
Right.
So when you're with a woman that you really love that is doing all those things that we're not, that insecurity can almost become exacerbated.
Yeah.
And so this is why the love of a woman and a man committing to his work can produce a powerful combination, because it can help mitigate that insecurity.
Yeah.
It can help create an environment and a safe space where the man feels comfortable resolving that insecurity and getting back to a place where he likes who looks back at him in the mirror.
Yeah.
You know, and I had to get there. You know, I definitely had dealt with a lot of insecurities, and so I had to really get to the place where I liked myself. You know, and that was a hard process.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times it's like, oh, well, I don't feel good enough. You know, I don't feel man enough in whatever way. But getting to the place where I finally say, okay, cool. You know, the person that looks back at me in the mirror, I'm okay. You're not so bad.
Yeah.
That then produces even more confidence and more success, not publicly but personally.
Is there is it ever principled when men don't make a commitment, but when they're honest? I mean, in other words, would you say to men who want to date several women at a time, but if they're honest about it, that is acceptable?
Here's what I would say. I would say that when you're dating, it is important to have the freedom to explore the right fit.
Okay.
What I would say is that you should also be cautious of, are you feeding the master or the dog? Because that lust in men can be very deceptive.
Right.
Meaning you could be honest and be above board, but at the end of the day, you still are dating multiple women and feeding the dog and treating them more like objects. So I would not say that that's not something you couldn't do, but I would encourage every man to look at it. You know, okay, well, what are you getting out of the multiple women? You know, what are you running from potentially? What are the issues underneath there? And there may not be, but there could also be. So I wouldn't just do that as a matter of course. I would encourage any man to really look at their motivations and intentions behind doing that.
DeVon Franklin, folks, the truth about men, and that's an important point. You know, the Adam and Eve story. I like that. You know, women, you can probably be all right, although I don't know how many of us want women to know that they may not need us as much as we.
Well, see, that's the dog, man. That's the dog. The dog like to operate in the shadows. You know what I'm saying?
Right. You know, y'all don't need that. But it's like I was marrying a couple once, and the brother wanted the scripture read. You know, wives obey your husbands.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, okay, but we're gonna read the whole thing. And the wife didn't want it.
Mm.
I said, but we're gonna read the rest of it.
Mm-hmm.
Where it says, you know, husbands, you will
That's right.
treat your wife
That's
as the way
right.
Christ
That's
treated
right.
the church.
That's right.
And then what did Christ do for the
He
church?
gave his life.
Gave his life. Then the husband didn't want to read it no more.
Uh-huh.
And the wife said, no, let's
No,
read
keep
that. So we ended up doing the whole thing in the service. You
I
know,
love it.
But no,
I
that's
love it.
important.
Ephesians.
Folks, check it out. DeVon Franklin, What Men and Women Need to Know. It's the truth about men. He's New York Times bestseller. Family's good? Megan's good?
Great.
Everything's good?
Great. Yeah,
All right,
can't
man.
complain.
Well, congratulations on
Thank
the tour.
you.
Keep up the good work,
Will
my brother.
do.
All right, y'all
Appreciate
need to know this for Valentine's Day. Get your head on right. We did do the Million Man March, y'all. So we supposed to be acting in this way and continuing to learn and to grow and mature as men. Thank you, brother.
Thank
Good to
you.
see All right.
Good to see you too.
All right.